Hello, who are you, where are you, and how do you make a living on the edge of this incredible
Hi.
crisis-ridden world?
All right. So my name is Olivier Schulbaum. I'm part of a band. It's not really a band. In fact, it's some kind of a social enterprise called Platonic with a Q at the end. And I'm sitting in the office, a brand new office in Palma de Mallorca. We used to have an office in Barcelona, and we have changed our location. And I can tell you why if you want. And what was the last part of the question?
How do you make a living?
Okay. So basically, we have various projects running, mainly based on ICTs. The last one we have worked on, and it's pretty occupying our time, is Goteo, which is a crowdfunding platform which adds crowdsourcing options to so an initiator of a project is not only asking money, it's building a community around the crowdfunding and the crowdsourcing kind of a skeleton. But of course, we have never believed in living out of a service on internet. So what we basically live out of giving offline services, which is about like doing lots of workshops, consultancy for social enterprises, for cooperatives. So that's mainly where we do our living. So basically, we developed tools on internet, and these tools bring us some kind of a reputation, and so that's the base for our business, which is about like giving services to public administration. Although it's a bit hard thing to do right now in Spain, but to also to private entities. So that's basically how we try to make our living.
And how did Goteo come about?
Okay, so Goteo is a result of 2 years research on let's say alternative economy models, basically based on the internet, so peer-to-peer credits, microcredits, all this kind of stuff, and we finally ended up with developing Goteo, which is again is based on a combination of crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. Plus, we do add a very important, which is part of our mission, a very important element, which is the open element. So what we call the open DNA. So we basically only help projects to be founded if they have this open ADN. So it could be open design, free software, open hardware. So we basically only concentrate on these new business models because we think it's the only alternative right now. So that's basically more than a crowdfunding thing. It's more about like microcredits that you give back in the form of educational packages, code if what you do is software, or the design if what you do is design, etc. So that's why we totally have integrated which the open licensing process to the project. So a project that has been funded through Goteo or will be funded through Goteo got these open licenses associated to their project from the early beginning. So basically it's about like building community and asking for money for open projects. So basically when I help a project through Goteo, I do somehow help opening up processes. So not only getting if we take an example, we have an open shoes project. It's not only about buying the shoes. It's about like putting money to liberate part of the shoes. So the design and let other people build their own shoes on their own economy on a basically open model. So that's the type of processes we look for. So we do believe this is the future.
You said you began that 2 years ago. What brought you to that conclusion that that was the future?
Again, as I said at the early beginning, because we always have these two approaches, the online one and the offline one, we always have done or conceived all these exercises to let people know how a platform or any kind of tool on internet is functioning, but in a very, very analog way. So that's why when we started to think about like coming with a model like Goteo, we decided not to touch code before we were sure what kind of tool we would need. So that's why basically we organize a tour with long workshops, crowdfunding workshops, and which have a part also about like how can I open my project. So how can we invent new open processes. And that's where we got the conclusion. So in this process of co-designing the tool, the Goteo as it is now, that's why it's much richer. That's why it's got advanced feature comparing to the other platforms, etc. So we did put a very intensive interest in co-designing and being sure what we had to be developed. So we don't have an empty space on the internet, one more. So that was basically our approach. And again, because this is basically the capital that Goteo brings with it, we do lots of workshops. So that's how we get money, basically, not from a small percentage we get from the successful project through Goteo. So this is not a business model. The business model is selling services around it. So basically, it's a common thing with lots of open practices.
You said you were going to tell me why you moved from Barcelona to Palma de Mallorca.
Okay, so basically because Susana, who's part of the team, of the original team of Platonic, is from Mallorca, and then second, because Mallorca is much nicer to live, so we have a little garden, we have our own tomatoes, we produce our own lemons, etc. So that's also a way of finding a real useful way to use internet. So that's the first time I think that it's good to use internet since I've got my own garden, because then we can find a manual to to build anything that we need or share practices with other ecological producers. So that's basically why we are so happy about having made this change. And apart from that, we also, I guess, before we got the office, which is a very pretty new thing, we reached the moment where we spent half of what we spent in Barcelona. So, and we had a free office in Barcelona. So basically in rent, in food, in transport, here we have reduced it quite a lot. And then it's also, for us, it has been a great model because we could unplug from the Barcelona kind of a social network. And it's much nicer to work from Mallorca. We have a beautiful light, very inspiring. And what we do normally, before we were working with people helping us developing the project in an office in Barcelona or full time, and now they just come 3 days a month, and the work or the sprints we organize are much more effective. So it's basically, we're quite happy about the change. So we would have to recalculate the whole thing since we have a new office now. So I'm not sure how the things will go, but I mean, that was the first idea.
How is the crisis affecting the projects you're involved in, and specifically, are people being more attracted to Goteo, for example, because of the crisis, do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of a schizophrenic situation because we have much more demands. It's not only because of Goteo, it's also because we have been involved in very participative processes. So there's lots of institutions that wants us to help them to develop participative projects, which is a bit the problem of that is that they have less money than before, and they want participation because they think it's cheaper and because the users or the public or the audience will provide the contents. So it's a big mistake we have to fight with. So basically, and on the other hand, of course, 50% of the money we make is from public institutions. So this has been, of course, affected quite a lot by the crisis because if before they were lasting a year to pay us our bills, and now they last 2. So, but on the other hand, of course, we have multiplied the workshops because, of course, crowdfunding seems to be one of the possible or at least practical alternative for innovative projects to be to find a way of being funded. But I think we have to use this opportunity to let people know that. We have to combine that model of crowdfunding with crowd benefits. The opportunity is now. It won't be tomorrow. We have to use crowdfunding to, produce open projects and see, that the open models basically are much more effective and are not as obsolete as the closed ones. So there's kind of this schizophrenic thing. We have more demand and And we also have the problem with the 50% of the public money we normally live from.
You said you'd unplugged from your network in Barcelona. Do you have another network, and how important are networks to you in your work?
Again, we have to talk about the offline and online because, of course, again, that's why something I didn't say about Mallorca. Mallorca has a very great airport and a big hub. So, and as a resident in Mallorca, we pay half of the trips. This means we can travel the double of what we used to travel. So that means we can decide where to work for 3 days and meet interesting people, for example, in Bilbao, wherever in Spain, which is something we didn't do before. So this is also a big change for us. So I think this helps to make the networks really like you can touch them, you can work with people. So and that has also been a positive change for us. And basically, I think we have to do a lot of effort of meeting each other because although we know each other, we know our practices, it's much better to have a sprint from time to time and concentrate on a few things to develop, and instead of having an online to-do list and having some kind of schizophrenic idea of being everywhere at the same time. Sometimes it's good to be located in some places and work with people for 3 days, and then let's meet on the internet if necessary. But I mean, yeah, so we have to combine the two models.
You've made a lot of headlines this week because Goteo has been used to crowdfund a campaign to take a legal to do a legal case against the ex-director of one of the banks in crisis in Spain. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Okay, so this has been a very, very successful project, but a bit of a pressure for us too, because we couldn't imagine that this would grow so fast. So just to get have an idea, normally we have like 8 or 10,000 visits a day, and we had the double of that in an hour, in the first hour of the campaign, because there's so many people that are fed up with the halls of the banks being filled by public money when everything else is completely reduced. There's no money for R&D, there's no money for health, there's no money for education, but there's always money for saving the bank. So we all know that. But the fact is, as Coteo, so we had to deal also with this big traffic somehow. But it's good to know that there's so many people being ready of putting 5 money in helping a court, to go against the banker. But I mean, this also has been a very violent lessons we had to learn, because we had so many demands, and we had to change the server in the middle of the campaign. Originally, the idea was to get 15,000 euros in 6 days, and we got it in 24 hours. But of course, if we wouldn't have had to change the server, probably we would have get it in 3 hours. So we had also to deal with the fact that the initiators of the campaign would need to just like close the campaign as soon as we got to the minimum, because this was going so fast. So the getting so much money was kind of a reverse problem for the initiators and for us too, because then the more money you get, and because the idea was to be transparent, we can't be the bankers again. So that has been all this kind of a schizophrenic situation of using a bank payment platform, to go against the bank. So it would be a very sociological case, a very interesting sociological case to dig into. But I mean, we haven't had time to do that. Now we have to process the payments from the PayPal platform, from the banks. It has been a crazy thing, but I think it's a very new paradigm, which I think is the first international kind of a social political campaign being funded through crowdfunding. So it's like a crowdfunded justice somehow. Let's see how the case is going on, and let's see how the whole thing goes on. But at least it has been a very, very impressive citizen kind of evolution, I would say.